Welcome to another real-time strategy top 10 video. In this video we'll be looking at the top 10 worst legendary lords and seeing which is just the least legendary out of them all. We are looking into what legendary lord is the least powerful straight off the bat, with no items, legendary weapons or buffs included in this ruling. This will be based on statistics, abilities and who wins in a fight. To get this information, I have listed each of the lord's base stats and ranked them in both median and average. I then compared these figures and made the preliminary list of those rankings. I then accounted for abilities and how they performed in a fight, with the lord above its ranking and below its ranking. If they won or lost, they may have gone up or down on the ranking. Now, I know most spellcaster lords will naturally be the weakest off the bat due to them being magic users and not melee lords, so aren't designed for that. So aren't necessarily the worst, just on stats. But I've accounted for this. Before we begin, thanks for clicking on this video out of the millions available to you. If you found this one, then you will most likely enjoy my other top 10 best legendary lords video. So why not click subscribe below for daily gameplay, weekly lore videos and top 10s. You may even enjoy my top 10 best legendary lords list as I mentioned above. I also have an Instagram account for anyone interested. I actually paint Warhammer models as a hobby, so if you're into that, then check the link below to follow the Instagram account. Might have even painted one of your favourite legendary lords. So let's start with number 10, which is a good place to start for a top 10 list, I think. Number 10. Isabella von Karstein. Starting this list is Isabella. Now, she has an above average stat line of 4,208 health, 90 armor, which is pretty good, 80 leadership, 40 speed, 50 attack, 65 defense and 430 weapon strength. She has a weak charge bonus of 25, but other than that, she's pretty decent. The only issue is that for her price of 2,271 gold, there are a lot of better options for the vampire counts on multiplayer battles, and in campaign you would never pick her over Vlad because of his vanguard ability and overall better stat line. Also, to fully unlock her potential, she needs to be paired with Vlad. So why not just get Vlad? She's an incredibly cool character with some very interesting lore, but unfortunately this hasn't saved her from reaching number 10 on this list. Number 9. Marathi. Now, Marathi is one legendary lord that I have previously said is a bit weak. Her stats make her very weak in close combat with a melee defense of 40 and only 15 armor, but she isn't a melee focused lord, she's a caster, so her spells should boost her usefulness in a fight. Well, she has access to the Lore of Death and the Lore of Shadows, which is definitely useful later on in your campaign, and if you unlock those good spells in multiplayer for her to use before your battle. But with her only other abilities being Hide and Encourage, it doesn't exactly hold her up against Malekith, who also has access to spells and can stick up for himself in a fight, whatever point in the game you're at. She has Anti-Large and Armor Piercing, but when is she ever going to use those? 2,207 gold, when Malekith is 2,360. I would never pick Marathi over Malekith, unless I wanted to spread corruption and have a different starting position. The spreadsheet placed her stats at being the 9th worst, and after looking more in depth, I believe she deserves that spot. Number 8. Treach Craventail. This sneaky little bugger had a lot of potential, and if used correctly can do some serious damage, but his stats are distinctly average for a lord, and since this list starts with his stats alone, he hit the bottom 10. After looking into him a bit, I found that he deserved this placement. He has 90 armor, which is a good start, only has 65 leadership, which is low for a lord, and is actually co-joint worst leadership stat for all lords. Even Skarsnik has 75. He has 40 melee attack and 400 weapon strength. He has a very good defense of 70 and pretty good speed. He gets vanguard deployment for his troops and has a charge defense against large. So on paper he's a very strong rat, but in execution and stats he's pretty weak. He is a melee expert, but if you want a melee lord, then why not go for Queek, who is far superior. If you want spells, you should go for Skrolk. Treach is very situational, not particularly good at anything other than staying alive, and staying alive isn't going to win any fights when your leadership is only 65. It's not like you can hope that he will outlast other units and to stem the tide whilst your warriors regroup, because his leadership is just as likely to break. He won't kill anything without support, and he won't stick around without support. Overall, in execution, he ended up being the 8th worst lord. Number 7. Alberic de Bordelot. Who? I honestly forgot about this lord when creating this list and jotting down all the lord's stats in the game, and apparently for good reason when looking at his stats. He came out as the 10th worst lord stat-wise, but he got moved around the list down to number 7 after reviewing his unique abilities, and lack of. He is armoured and shielded and is anti-large. That's it. He gets 15% missile resistance, hide, encourage as standard as most other lords, but then he gets Spirit of the Tempest. This ability just speeds him up a bit, and gives him a better charge bonus of him and allies around him. He has 4,168 health, 90 armor, 75 leadership, 34 speed, which is not great off horse, 57 melee attack, 40 melee defense, and 430 weapon strength. Very average. He has no spells, no other unique abilities to make him stand out. A very bland, dull, and forgotten lord, which deserves better, especially since his lore is actually fleshed out. He gets access to a hippogriff, but not for a while for campaign players. At the time of recording, it actually states he has the lore of death and is a wizard, when he definitely isn't. That's how forgotten he is. Well deserved number 7. Number 6. Ilario, the Ever-Chosen. The first probably controversial pick, but let's face it, Ilario is a very weak lord, where there are better picks in both multiplayer and campaign for what you want. Generals should go straight for Techless if they want a spellcaster. Now, Ilario's speciality is keeping people alive and is a healer first and foremost. I understand that, and I get that, but her stats don't make it easy for her to stay alive herself. 3,888 health is very low. 15 armor is non-existent, 36 speed is slow, 23 charge bonus is wasted because she would never be charging, 300 weapon strength is very low for a lord, and 45 melee attack is okay. Her melee does do magical damage, granted, but her mix of 55 melee defense and just 15 armor means she is very weak if swamped, and with no shield and a low health pool is a very juicy missile target. It's best just to get Techless and accompany him with a Lore of Life Mage as a healing support if you want that, rather than just use her as your general slot, who tries to do both healing and powerful Lore of High later on in the game. In campaign, she is even a burden if Ulthuan is invaded or swarmed by anyone other than High Elves, where she will debuff her faction into oblivion. A shame, because I love her lore and her reincarnation in Age of Sigmar, but stats-wise, and after some thought, she is the 6th worst lord in the game. Number 5. Grand Hierophant Kartep. He should be on this list just for his annoying voiceover work, but his stats placed him here instead. Also on 3,888 health, 40 armor, 31 speed, 28 melee attack, 38 melee defense, 300 weapon strength, and 10 charge bonus means he hits as hard as a ladybird in melee. But as with many others on this list, he is a spellcaster, but a poor one at that. He has access to the Lore of Nehekara, which is a pretty weak lore of magic with only 2 direct damage spells, one being a vortex. Another if you count Sandstorm. The rest are buffs for otherwise throwaway infantry lines. He does cause fear and has his bound ability the Curse, but all this doesn't hold him up enough in a fight to overcome his contemporaries. Even Arcan the Black is a better spellcaster choice for the Tomb Kings, with 1,000 more health and stronger melee stats. Arcan even gets a chariot to better position himself to cast spells and plough through infantry. Kartep gets the Casket of Souls, which makes him a powerful artillery piece granted, but a massive target, and an easy one to catch at 26 speed. Some may disagree, but his stats put him at the 5th weakest lord, and anywhere near a melee fight and he's back in his tomb. Number 4. The Fae Enchantress. A worse Ilario, which is a real shame. 3,688 health, which is terribly low. 15 armor, 70 leadership, 40 speed, 34 melee attack, and 42 melee defense. 300 weapon strength. She has the Law of Life, and that's it. The Mist of the Fae helps a teeny bit when she is swamped, but nothing even close to enough for her to do any outstanding damage. She gets a unicorn, which is awesome no matter who you are, but Ilario got an eagle and some very heavy duty spells later on. The Fae gets nothing of that sort, just a horse that is cosplaying as a narwhal. For her price of 1892, just get Leon on a horse for a much easier fight for 7 less gold than the base version of the Fae. Number 3. Alith Anar. Another controversial one. I'm sure many of you will disagree with this, but the spreadsheet placed him as 3rd worst stats in both median and average. Taking away his 3 range stats in the figures, and he isn't in the top 10 worst, but he is still in the top 15. This means that his stats are on average okay, melee stats especially. So why is he number 3? Well, he is again too situational and easy to target. His biggest help with this is his mislead ability, which on multiplayer is useless because anyone with common sense, and anyone who ever played Halo Reach, can tell when there is a copy of a person running towards the enemy and not the person themselves. He is a skirmish ranged lord specialising in hit and run. This means that most of the time he should be away from his main army unless being macroed to his full potential to snipe enemy lords in the heat of battle from a distance. But if the enemy lord is mounted, then he is easily tracked down and singled out because he should never be in melee, and being a skirmish lord, he should be far away enough from any help from the front line. This means his aura abilities and leadership buffs are most likely never going to be felt to the average frontline infantry elf, and if he is tracked down, he won't have any backup. But if you put him behind your lines, you aren't going to use him to his full potential. He's like a seesaw that you can never really go fully horizontal. He gets Vanguard, further cementing my point, and he has armor piercing, but if you don't use him correctly, he is going to be a wasted slot. This is why he is number 3. It's like the game even knows he isn't that great at his 1580 price point. Only 380 gold more expensive than a normal lord with a bow. Not so legendary, but I am happy to hear your guys' opinion. Number 2. Helmand Gorst. I thought old Helmand would be number 1. He was very close. Added in one of the most lackluster DLCs in the game, Helmand is a necromancer with no kick. 15 armor, 70 leadership, 34 speed, 30 melee attack, 44 defense, 12 charge, and 340 weapon strength. He has regeneration, and all this culminates to is being a worse Kemmler. His mount is a corpse cart, which severely reduces his stats in every way but gives him an unholy lodestone. Other than that, he has the same spells that any other necromancer or vampire could get. Why would you ever pick him over Heinrich Kemmler or a vampire lord? I honestly have no idea, so if you guys can give me some good examples, please feel free. Kemmler is 200 gold more and gets Krell. Gorst's stats are poor, and his presence on the field is non-existent. No one looks at Gorst and thinks, uh-oh, he's the 2nd worst lord in the game. Number 1. Balthasar Gelt. He was the worst lord in the spreadsheet on both median and average, and he has the lowest stats in the game for a lord. He is the wizard of the Law of Metal, and he has 20 armor. What? 65 leadership, 34 speed, 34 melee attack, 38 defense, 300 strength, and 30 charge bonus. He has terrible stat lines and has no special attributes. None. He just has the Law of Metal. There is no redeeming factor for the guy. His lore isn't even touched on in the game, which is a real misstep. He's just an overly boasting wizard with a mask who has no special aspects to him. You are honestly better off just getting a wizard with the lore of metal and saving the money. The worst lord in the game by far. And with that, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you would like to leave your top 10 worst legendary lords below, that would be great. But whilst you're down there, maybe click subscribe or check out my other videos. I look forward to seeing you in the comments section in future. If not, thank you for finding this video and for watching. See you next time.